It's your boy DAB, and I'm here with Adome and Christina. Welcome, guys. How are you?
What's going on, Deb?
Hey.
Good, good. All right. So listen, our boy Jazz is not here because he has been a lazy bitch and he did not watch all the episodes yet. So we kicked him out of the podcast. But a dome you guys might remember from our Star Wars episode. So he was here for Ahsoka, and while we were filming Ahsoka, he mentioned that his wife is very, very into Love is Blind. So I figured, why not have them for Love is Blind? There is a small Venn diagram of Star Wars fan and reality TV fan. So we'd love to capture that. That is the best thing ever. So welcome to the show, Christina. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I don't get to talk about Love is Blind as often as I would like, so this is really exciting and kind of
I know.
nerve-wracking.
It's funny. We got a dome for the Star Wars reference, and then we got you for the Love is Blind. Like, you guys are the total package.
Thank you.
We love it. We love it. All right. Listen, last episode we left off. It got kind of hairy, kind of hairy. What were your thoughts about the first 4 episodes, Christine? I want to get your opinion on it since you weren't on that episode.
Yeah, that's a there's a lot there. Okay, so one of the things that I noticed that they did differently from previous seasons in the first 4 episodes is they spent a lot of time like in the in-depth conversation. So I'm thinking specifically like Uche and Aaliyah and that like long drawn out fight that they had, I believe in episode
Yeah.
3. Um, I was just like, God, this is so long and so unnecessary in some ways. And also like made me really, really mad because of how Uche approached the situation. And like, I don't know, I have thoughts about Aaliyah, but like how she also approached the situation, how there's like this weird like dominance situation happening with Uche over Aaliyah and his opinions. So that's going back to what I was originally saying, like the just long, drawn out, um, deep conversations that kind of led
Yeah,
to nowhere in some senses.
that's
With
true. They
different,
did talk a little bit in circles.
yeah, a little bit, a lot. I also like JP and Taylor. Is that her name? The
Yeah.
blonde
Yep.
girl.
Yep.
Yeah. Their like lead up was really, really short, and then they got engaged, and I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like we're missing a lot of information here. But I guess it makes sense moving into these episodes, which we'll get to.
Totally agree.
Um, and I mean, like just Lydia.
Woo,
Lydia's
Lydia.
a lot.
She,
Lydia's a lot. Milton's a lot. Izzy's a lot. Just a lot.
there's a lot of people on here that are just like shitty people. Like, they're just diabolical.
Like it's just I just feel like they're so shallow. Like every season, it just gets more and more and more shallow. And I'm
Is-
like,
Isn't it strange for a show to be called Love is Blind, have people on there that are so shallow? Like, that's just mind boggling.
I mean, but I guess that's what makes good TV, you
It
know?
does make good TV.
I'm
It's
like, if I'm thinking, like, I'm gonna go way back and pull like the real world MTV series, like all of those seasons got more and more and more shallow too.
mm,
As like the seasons grew into the double digits. So I feel like that's just like kind of the trend, the curse, the cycle of reality TV as we go through the seasons and know what comes up over and over and over again.
makes sense. Makes sense. Love that. Don, what is your relationship with this show? Do you like this show, or are you just like roped into watching the show the way Christina is roped into watching Star Wars?
That's probably a good analogy. So, we got married in October of 19, and we went on our honeymoon in November, and then like December 2019, January 2020, I think is when this first started. And I didn't really know much about the show, but Christina was like, "Hey, we got to watch this show," and I was like, "All right, whatever." So we start watching it, and I was hooked. And I remember one day I was sitting at work, and I was like, fuck, man, I can't wait to get home to finish Love is Blind. Like, what's wrong with me? Like,
That's how they get you. That's how they
yeah, we
get
literally,
you.
we binged the entire thing. So, I mean, I'm not, anyone who knows me knows I'm not really big into reality TV at all. But this show, one, because Christina loves it, but two, I actually do like the drama. And one thing for me is like, I always try and find like the one couple to like root for that you want to win. In season one, it was
Yes.
clearly Lauren and Cameron. There hasn't been
Love them.
a good couple since, but this season, I don't like any of these mofo's. Like, I don't know
I
if I want
don't.
any of them to like. I don't know, man. It's weird. Like, I don't think I want any of them. Like, the drama is just so messy. I mean, I was kind of in snooze mode until they revealed that Uche and Lydia knew each other. I think
Yeah,
that was like the end of episode 4, and I was like, oh, this is like the mother of all twists. Like, this
that
is
was a good twist.
great. But before that, I was like, I don't know, man. There aren't really a lot of likable characters so far. I
I'm
don't.
kind of with you
It's
there.
weird.
I'm kind of with you there. There's some people who I tolerated, but after these 3 episodes, I was like, oh, they're on my bad side. So let's get into it because this is gonna be fun. Christina, I just want to give you a heads up that if you move around a lot, I think your microphone picks up some scratching noise. So just be aware of that. But other than that, I think we should be good. So listen, we left off at finding out that Lydia and Uche dated, and Alia did not show up. Aaliyah did not show up for their last date, where he was probably going to propose. Crazy, crazy. So this was pretty insane. So they decided to have like a phone call and was like, "Hey, do you want to talk to her on the phone?" And he's like, "Yeah." And they have this like conversation, and it was just not a pleasant. Uche is somebody who just like you just don't want to get in an argument with. He's just so hard to I don't know. He just comes off very harsh, and he was very very. I would say I don't want to say mean, but he kind of wanted to get the last like sting in. He didn't want her to have the last like word where she just didn't show up. He wanted to get some licks in, and then he at the end he was like, "No, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want your number." Click and
Like,
just like completely, completely just dumped it. And I thought that was wild. I don't know. I'm getting some red flags with Uche. Christina, what are your thoughts about that phone call?
um, I mean, like Uche was clearly frustrated. Can totally understand that. I still don't understand why Leah just left. Like, I get that Lydia gave her a lot of information. It was a lot to think about, but
Yeah.
like I don't know. It's a really intense situation. So of course I understand needing space just from the situation and then from Lydia separately. Um, and you have that, I would assume, in some way, shape, or form between like the day that you're told all the information and the next day, or however many days later. So like I personally can't understand why she left. But at the same time, like the way that Uche approached the even just the conversation, I'm like, I'm glad that she left. Like she did the right
Yeah.
for herself because Uche, in my opinion, like super logical, like super like linear thinker. But when it comes to moments where things aren't as linear for him in his brain, it's like the wheels come off and it's just not not a good look. Not a good look
No.
at all. He's like you said, really harsh. I think that he's like I said this to a dome as we were watching the show. He has this like holier than thou, like
Yeah.
godlike almost um, personality, presence, way of speaking, way of like talking to other people. And if he doesn't get his way, it just like amplifies it, and it's a lot, like a lot.
It's really interesting because someone told me like the there is this way to argue where like you bring up all these things and get people's emotions really high, but then you talk really, really calmly to make them seem like the crazy person when you're like really out there, just like, just pushing all their buttons and it's crazy. And I feel like that's kind of what he does. Adele, what were your thoughts about the phone call? What are your thoughts about Uche in general?
So, I mean, I get where he's coming from because he clearly wanted to be with the Leah, but I mean, there's a lot of like back and forth with him that kind of gives me a little bit of pause. So, I think this is in episode 2 when they were talking about how essentially Aaliyah had cheated on somebody and didn't tell them.
Mm-hmm.
And his line of questioning essentially elicited that response from her. I don't think she was going to share it anyway, but when he asked her questions, she was truthful. And, babe, you're right. There was the holier than thou kind of attitude there. But at the same time, like, you're going to be with somebody, you got to ask questions. You want to know things. So I appreciate his, inquisitive side on how he's asking questions to know things. Because, I mean, to me, even though a lot of characters are not likable, I think actually Uche is probably the one who's actually committed the most to actually like the parameters of the experiment, the way he's been going about like trying to get to know a person without actually seeing them. And I can understand why he was really pissed that she just left without saying anything. But I also think he's really not understanding or appreciating the fact that like, yes, Lydia is there. He doesn't have to deal with her, but like Lydia and Aaliyah are like sitting on the couch and just like talking buddy buddy, and there's nowhere for Aaliyah to go. Like
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, like, who else is Aaliyah friends with? From what they showed us, she doesn't really talk to anybody else
Yeah.
on
I
the other
wonder if she
side.
did that by design. Like she became really close friends with her when she found out she was talking to Uche. I don't know.
I definitely think that's the case because she was sharing out stuff about how like, ooh, like his dog is this, his favorite color is that. He lives in a nice house. I was like, this bitch is crazy. Like, what?
Yeah. And then she's like, we just, he just hit 3 months ago. I was like, well, damn, like this is a lot of information.
And she was saying like, I don't want to know this, and then Lydia just kept going on and on and on about it. So I mean, it's to me, it's just too much of a mess. But I mean, in a perfect world, quote unquote, I would have liked to see Aaliyah and Uche. Aaliyah and Uche close things off in the pods versus having that sit down lunch where they basically just said, "Hey, screw you, we're gonna go our separate ways."
Yeah,
Type
it
thing.
was pretty rough. So, a lot of things that Uche mentioned was that he was feeling smothered by Lydia, and that's why they broke up. Which I could see. I feel like Lydia is even smothering Alia, like she smothers everybody, which I think was really really interesting. Um, and she may have been snooping and going through his things and following a bunch of his friends. A lot of unhinged behavior going on. And one of the things that Alia mentioned on the phone was that I don't know what if you guys planned this to be on this show together. And he was like, yeah, we planned this to be on the show together and like didn't talk to each other, and now we're gonna get together. Which I kind of feel like, yeah, they probably didn't plan it together, but I wouldn't put it past Lydia to snoop through his things, find out he was on the show, and then apply. I think that would be unhinged, but
Which is
hilarious.
crazy.
I mean, but Adom even said that. He was like, I bet you she, went onto his phone after 3 months ago when he was getting it with her, like to see what he was up to be wherever he was.
Yeah, and here's the thing. As someone who may have applied for a reality TV show, it takes more than 3 months for them to actually get everything done. You got to go through a psychiatric screening. You got to go through a a social media background check. You got to go through a regular background check. You got to go through. You got to sign a bunch of contracts. Like, so I don't know if I even believe that they were getting together 3 months ago. It may have been even sooner than that, or there may have been some kind of devious plan going on here. Who knows? But it's wild. I don't know. 3 months is surprisingly the exact amount of time, which I'm just like, that's a convenient number. That's a convenient amount of months. Like, it's very plausible, is what I'm saying.
But then in future episodes, you hear more about their story. You hear like the longer timeline, how they met in 2020. So who
Yeah.
knows, like 3 months is what we hear at the end of, the end of episode 4 into episode 5. But then we go into, episode 6 and 7, and you're like, wait, what? There's more? Like
There's
it's
so
longer
much
than,
more.
yeah, there's so
There's
much
so
more.
much
And you're
more.
just like, what?
Right?
So it could have, I mean, in some ways you could see how it could have been a manifested plan, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I totally see that. I could totally see that. All right, so then Uche and Alea have a meeting. They finally meet face to face, and he is even more so like angry and not wanting. And she's like, "No, let's think about this." And he's like, "No, I don't need to have any contact with you." Very, very harsh. I thought the way he treated Alea was very, very harsh. And yeah, like her leaving him was rough, but like if you got to think about it this way, like she has a lot of emotions going on. Then she's got this girl who is his ex there. Then she got producers who she probably doesn't trust. She is in a very scary environment where she's kind of just like alone, and she decides to just leave. Honestly, I'd be kind of proud of her to do that. I think she should have left him a letter or something like that. But leaving, I think that might have been the right thing to do if you felt like your mental health was going to be deteriorated in a place where this crazy ex is manipulating you, the producers are manipulating you, and this guy you like is gaslighting you. Like it's a lot of stuff happening to the poor girl. What are your thoughts about that, Christina?
I mean, like I said, I feel like there's this weird dominance and submissive relationship that Uche and Aaliyah had that definitely shows up in that sit down meeting. You know, she barely gets a word in edgewise. She tries to make a point. He's like, smackdown, done. Like, don't want to hear what you have to say. He literally, like I said, that linear thinking comes out real linear with those wheels off as he's like going through just their relationship, how he's feeling, what he thinks like their next step should be. I think, like I said, I don't understand why she left so abruptly, but like you said, I think the mental health aspect is super important to highlight here, and I'm glad that she made that decision as well, because like I said, that submissive nature that you see in her, or at least the editing comes out
Mhm.
in her, was just not going to serve her well in a relationship with Uche, who is
Yeah,
again holier than thou in so many ways.
that's true. But between her and Uche, I think the person who got it worse is her ex, who she admitted to cheating on live TV, who didn't know, and then she said the sex wasn't good. Like that man was just catching strays. He
And that
didn't do anything
and
wrong.
and that it was like 3 months between when she cheated on him and when she left him. Like, damn, like that's
Yeah,
a lot.
someone needs to check up on that guy. I hope he's okay. Oh man. Speaking of guys who are okay, or we're hoping are okay, this guy doesn't seem to be very okay. Let's talk about JP and Taylor. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, Mr. Captain America, Mr. Where was he on January 6th? It's like this guy, who formerly known as Sugar Butt, I would say. Him and Taylor seems to be having a little bit of a rift. And she is saying once they have met and they got together, there has been an awkwardness, a real awkwardness between them two. And, to me, it seems like, okay, maybe he just doesn't like her. Maybe he's just not super attracted to her. She wasn't that attracted to him either because she didn't mention his gap teeth, right? Like gap tooth. So I was like, all right. But she's trying to make it work. He is just super silent, doesn't talk, doesn't say anything. Um, and then when he finally does, he says that the reason of because of all this awkwardness is because she wears too much makeup. Personally, I think that's a cop out. I think he just made that up. He just wanted an excuse. He just wasn't feeling it. But it seemed like he wanted, she slept in a different room and then they met up the next day. And it seemed like he still wanted to work things out. But she was like, nope, I'm good. I know my worth. I know what's going on here. I'm out. Christina, what are your thoughts about this couple?
Um, okay, Sugar and Sugar Butt, just wow. Um, I mean, I feel like Taylor, she's what, 25, 26,
Really?
right?
She looks a lot
Yeah.
older.
She looks a lot older. She's a teacher.
Yeah.
Um, but like there's a lot of growing that needs to be done. And I think that became really obvious
Mhm.
when she felt like there needed to be constant conversation. She needed constant validation from JP. And JP is 30, 31.
Yeah.
And not to say like 5 years is like hugely different, but in terms like knowing myself and where I was at 25 versus where I was at 30, my mentality and like my need for validation from other people, my need to have conversation at all times between, 25, 26 going up to 30, like completely changed. So I think that again, there's a lot of growth that Taylor might need.
Mhm.
um, and that for me was super evident. I think there's also a lot of insecurities, which we heard in her intro, right? Like,
True.
she's like, I love myself now. I didn't love myself in the past. And that is always being a work in progress. I think we all are a work in progress all the time. But like if you're already saying that out loud, like that is just red flag, numero uno for me.
Mm.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it like, something that someone else needs to recognize and like work on. I think JP is the strong silent type. He's a firefighter. Like I've personally never met a firefighter that's like super talkative. So
Interesting. Yeah, he was very, very quiet, and I was wondering if he's just an introvert, and maybe he was just a little bit more talkative because they were in the pods, and there was a different environment and stuff like that. And then in his real life, he's just very, very quiet because that one guy who showed up at the end, Carter, says, "I knew they weren't going to make it because she wasn't going to be able to stand his silence." Right. So even the guys knew that he is not a very talkative person.
Yeah.
So him being not super talkative shouldn't have been a shock. But I guess she saw another side of him during the pods and she thought it was very, very different. So I don't know.
Maybe like the thing about these reality TV shows, these like love dating shows, is that you're meant to find love, right? Like that is the absolute purpose, right? And so you're narrowly thinking about falling in love with someone, right? And so in this case, maybe she just fell in love, like obviously blindly, but she fell in love with the idea of having someone that she trusted and cared about, and not the actual like physical reality of what that could look like. Right. And that silence exists in any relationship, right? Like Adom and I don't talk to each other all day, every day.
Yeah. There's got to be a comfort level. Like if you're really comfortable in your relationship, you can literally just like sit next to each other and not talk and still feel a sense of like quality time. I think that's very, very important.
And comfort with yourself being silent too. Like until I got to that point personally, I don't think I was ready for a longer term relationship.
Very good point. Adom, what are your thoughts about JP? Do you think he's just the strong silent type who's just very quiet and a little bit of an introvert? Or do you think he made up the whole makeup thing because he just was not into her and the whole thing fell apart? Or do you think he's truly just like, hey, things are awkward because I just don't like the way you look in makeup, even though she didn't wear that much makeup, in my opinion. I'm not a girl. I would ask Christina about that, but I don't think she put that much makeup on. But who knows? Like she didn't look like I don't know, like a stripper. So I don't know what he's talking about. Adom, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so a couple things on JP. I mean, to me, red flag out of the boat, like you said. He was wearing the American flag in some way, shape, or form. And let me tell you, that's actually my wife knows this. I complain about this all the time. All the people out there, you should look up 4 U.S. Code Section 8. It's called Respect for the Flag. It says verbatim, the flag should not be worn as apparel. So every time you see somebody wearing the flag as a shirt or a dress or anything else, that's actually violating U.S. Code. So to me, that was just a walking red flag. No pun intended with him, with everything he was saying. So that's just me on that. But I know we don't get the full story of all their conversations in the pods, but from what we were shown, I feel like JP and Taylor, they got engaged super fast. I think they maybe had 3 dates, correct me if I'm wrong, in the pods, and he proposed right away.
Yeah.
Their conversations really didn't get that deep. I do know there was that one conversation where he was talking about how his mom was really mean to his sisters and how he would go in and like try to protect her. That was him kind of opening up. And then all of a sudden, I feel like they were just engaged right after that. So I don't think they really talked enough. And he clearly, is a self-proclaimed introvert. He's okay with silence. I also thought it was kind of weird how when they were together in Mexico on vacation, he does this really weird thing where like when he kisses her, he just like pulls back really quickly. I was like, that's really weird to me, the way he just like acts like that all the time. And I also thought it was kind of funny how, those parts of the show where they give like the couple the camera to like film themselves. And like Izzy and Stacy were talking, and then like it went to JP and Taylor, and he holds the camera up, and she's just like, "I'm not talking, you talk," and then the camera just cut off. I was like, "Oh damn, okay." She's not having it. So I don't know.
They were not having a good time.
Weird. No, it's weird. And then the makeup thing. I mean, I'm the kind of person who like I don't need a woman to wear a lot of makeup all the time, but I mean, it was kind of weird to me because he never came out and said like, you're beautiful without your makeup. You don't need to wear it. He kind of waited till afterward and was like, why are you trying to be fake? You don't need all that stuff. I was like,
yeah.
I feel like the message of what he was saying, I actually agree with, but like his delivery and timing were just like terrible.
I don't know. Christina, you could back me up on this, but I feel like a lot of times women don't really wear makeup for men. They wear makeup for themselves. She's on national TV. She's about to get proposed to. Why shouldn't she wear makeup? I don't know. What do you think, Christine?
I mean, like she said it herself, right? I wanted to look as good as possible for you. Like, I wanted to look my best for you when I met you. And that's totally true. Like, dating women, most women, I don't want to put that on everyone, but most women want to go out and look their best for whoever they're about to meet, even if it doesn't work out, right? And I think in the end, you know, especially culture these days, like makeup is for yourself, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
a self expression. So if that's how she's going to express herself, like more power to her. I think JP saying like you were wearing a lot of makeup is a personal assessment. Like let him have that personal assessment totally. But again, to what Adom was saying, like the delivery could have been like, I think you're beautiful with or without makeup. Like he never explicitly told her and gave her that validation that she's clearly seeking,
Mm-hmm.
of like, you are exactly what I want as you, with or without
Yeah.
makeup. And I think in many ways, she also didn't verbalize that that was what she was looking for, right? She
Mm-hmm.
just got mad at what she didn't have as opposed to, you know, saying what she would have liked out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah, and can I
Go
add one thing with that? So to what Christina's saying about the comparison part of it, Taylor did a lot of the comparison to Season Joy type of stuff, where she was kept saying like 5 or 6 times, these other couples they have this, they have that, and we don't. And I remember there was a very short conversation. I think it was between Milton and JP, and Milton was like, "Hey man, you getting laid and stuff," and JP was just like, "Nah,
Nope.
no, we're not." I was
And
like,
then Milton was like, I read that wrong.
yeah, I was like, oh, everything is not going well in paradise. But I think Taylor, unfortunately, she really let what was happening between the other couples when they met really get in the way. She was like, we should be talking more. We should be more all over each other. And I'm
Yeah.
kind of like, if you keep paying attention to what other people are doing, you're going to miss this right in front of you. So that
But
just
at the
was,
same time, like when she was having that conversation with Stacy on the beach about how she wasn't getting what she wanted, Stacy wasn't like being the older, wiser, as the internet calls her, the old lady, right, of the group. She was just like reinforcing all like she was asking all of the questions to reinforce why she wasn't getting what she wanted, as opposed to being like, okay, so how can we get you what you want, right? Like there was no problem
Mm-hmm.
solving. And that's why I was saying earlier, like it's just so shallow, right? It's like, okay, you want to fall in love, you're having a hard time, love isn't easy, period. So
True.
how do we make this easier for you, right? Like how do we get you what you want and figure out if this is it, if this is it. So
Mm. One of the things that I thought was a little bit of a red flag was that when he told her that, she looks better without makeup, he made it like she should be grateful that I said this to her. She was like, other women would love for a guy to say that to them, and you're not. And I thought that sounded a little manipulative. I don't know. It was kind of weird. He's like, you should be glad that I don't like you with makeup, which makes sense. But in this context, it was, I don't know. It came off really, really weird. And they did not last. So she gave him back the ring and they went their separate ways. And I'm excited to see them in the reunion because that's all we get. That's all we got. Um, the next couple that I want to talk about, Izzy and Stacy. Look, I started off really liking them. By the end of this episode, I do not like them. I am not a fan of these two. First of all, they're horny as fuck. They're just like all over each other. And then we got Stacy over here clogging the toilet. Like it's just a hot mess. It's just a hot mess. And they're just talking about body parts and all this stuff. I thought that was, I don't know. They're just all over the place. So everything seems to be going really, really well until they check out each other's houses. That's when things go wrong. So when they check out the house of Izzy, they find the lost and found, where there's earrings and condoms and all this other stuff. And she gets really, really upset about that because she thinks that he left them there so that she finds them and know that he is a player, which is one of her like things that people have said about him in the pot. So she was like, "Oh, he's a player." Uh, his thinking was, I gotta leave everything the way it is because I don't want to trick this person into thinking I'm someone that I'm not. So I'm just laying it all out on the line. Um, Definitely curious. Adom, what are your thoughts? Do you think he was just being honest and letting it all on the line, or he's kind of just bragging about his sexcapades?
I mean, again, we only have to go off what we were shown, but from his conversations in the pods where he, broke things off with Johnny and then ended up going with Stacy, I think Izzy is pretty. I mean, I don't think any of them are likable, but I think he's pretty genuine until proven otherwise with all this stuff. And so I don't think he's slick enough to be like, okay, I'm going to leave this stuff here so she gets the idea that I'm a player. I think he was open about the fact that, hey, this is who I am. This is how I live my life. I mean, the fact that she was upset about finding the drawer and like you wouldn't think to remove this so I wouldn't see it, and he was just like, no, I don't. I'm not thinking like 10 steps ahead. Then the other thing was she was so pissed about the fact that one, he had paper plates and solo cups, and then on top of that, she was pissed that he was like, yeah, I've cooked dinner for some other women before. I've never had any complaints, and she was like, I would have thrown it on the floor, and I'm like, okay, you're looking for things to be upset about, and then I don't know, he given his upbringing and some of the stuff we talked about with like the sad stories, bro, like him like not being able to like be a part of like the school Christmas thing because he was raised as a witness and all that other crazy stuff. Like he's had a pretty hard childhood, and so I think he was just being raw with it. He seems very stable emotionally. He was trying to work it out with her, and she just walked out of the room and started crying. And I'm like, what the like? What's the problem here? Like you're upset about jewelry that other women left behind and then paper plates and cups. Like these are your like these are your you shall not pass type of like non-negotiable deal breakers. Like, are you kidding me? Like, and then on the flip side, like, okay, you have this house, you come from this family, you like nice things and you want to travel. I thought the conversation with the dad was kind of hilarious because he was just like, yeah, love's great, but like she needs to eat and she wants to go out and fly first class. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
He's a simple man. There was this one part where they're talking about how they went to Paris, and he goes, "Oh, here?" They're like, "No, Europe, not Paris, Texas." I don't think anyone
Nice.
caught that.
Yeah, no, I caught that. I caught that. They were like, wait, we went to Nice. He was like, is that here? No, Paris.
He just didn't know. Oh man, Christina, what are your thoughts? You think she blew that out of proportion, or
Totally.
was she justified?
Totally. Okay, so they go into the lost and found drawer, and I go, Adom, did you have one of those? And like he was like, I don't know how to answer this. And I was like, no, just like, did you have one? And he was like, yeah, I did. And I was like, oh, okay. Like I didn't know it was a thing, first off, right? But like generally speaking, if you're with someone who you trust or you're supposed to trust, like
Yeah.
that to me, like, okay, you have a lost and found drawer. Past is the past. We leave that there. We're here in the present. Like, no big deal. Can we get rid of it? Is the question, right? Not like, oh my god, you have a lost and found drawer. Like, what are you doing? You're such a player. Blah blah blah. I'd be like, can we get rid of it? And if the answer is no, then that's a whole different question, right? Like, that's a whole different conversation. So I think just I think Stacey's reaction was an overreaction in many ways. But I also think it's related to how she was brought up, right?
Yeah.
It just feels really like Real Housewives creating drama out of nothing. The same thing with the plates. Like, okay, so you use paper plates. Like, have you never used a paper plate at a barbecue? Have you never used a paper plate at a friend's house or like, growing up, like eating dinner at someone else's house? Like, I don't see what the big deal was. And again, to me, it just read like Real Housewives, like useless, pointless drama over luxury. Like,
I agree. I when I lived alone, I also had paper plates and stuff, and it was because I was a lazy bitch. It had nothing to do with class or anything like that, and I didn't really have a lot of people over, so I didn't really care. I also think that do you think that he kept those things because what if they call him and they want it back and it's like a family heirloom, or was he keeping it as like a trophy, right? I don't see it as him keeping it as a trophy. I think he just kept it there in case somebody called him up and said, "Hey, I lost these earrings. It was a couple of months ago. I really, really need them," and he has them, right? For something like that, like I would be scared to throw something out. What if somebody needs it? What if it's a family heirloom? I don't want to throw out somebody's important thing. I would be kind of scared to do that. But like, I think he could have used that as an excuse, but no, his thing was just, no, this is just who I am. It's just, I don't know. I think he could have handled it better.
I mean, like if it was totally a trophy, he would know exactly who those earrings or whatever it was belonged to, right? Like
That's
that's
true.
he'd be able to be like Emily or like, Joanna, whatever. But he was just like, I don't remember who this is from. People just left it here and I kept it.
Right? What
Period.
if it's a friend? What if it's a
Yeah.
sister? What is this like a cousin? Like you don't
Yeah.
know who these
Like
earrings
and
belong to.
if he doesn't know who it belongs to me, that says like, okay, clearly it was not important to him.
Yeah, I've had
And I
people
can move
leave things
on.
in my car, and I'll keep them because one day they'll remember and be like, "Oh wait, did I leave this in your car?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, that was you. Here you go."
Yeah.
They're not like trophies. But from the other side, when they go and visit Stacy's place, they talk a lot about money, and she wants to be taken care of. And I don't know if this guy with an insurance job is able to take care of her based on his paper plates and stuff. But I don't know. He seems like a little bit like, he doesn't really have a good relationship with money. And she says that, would they be 50-50? And he goes, yeah. And she goes, what about dinners? And he goes, yeah. She goes, no, the man pays for the dinners. And things kind of flew off the walls there. She wants the guy to cover all the meals, fly her first class, and then feed her on paper on nice plates. That's the three things she wants.
With brass utensils, as she pointed
Yes,
out in her house.
silverware, exactly, right? So like the Queen of England is coming. I don't know. What are your thoughts, Adam? You think she is being unreasonable, or do you think her needs are fair?
I mean, out of the box, I think those expectations are completely bogus to bring up like that to somebody who you've been talking to and getting to know for a while, and then you wait until you bring them to this big house that you, quite frankly, it's a shit show. She's renovating it. She started talking about HVAC and 20 grand and all that other stuff. Like, there's a lot of shit going on in this house that I feel like she should have discussed with him beforehand. I mean, she did admit that I've been putting this conversation off with money, and now we're having it now, but I waited on purpose. But I feel like she should have done it beforehand. But I think those expectations are really just surface level, and I would love to just know, like, okay, why do you have these expectations, and more importantly, why are you holding on to them? Because
Mhm.
expectations change. I mean, you could date somebody who flies you first class everywhere, and the next person you end up dating could be like a school teacher. And obviously, if you're self-aware, you're going to know, okay, this is probably not going to be like the last relationship. I'm going to have to adjust a little bit, or just don't date someone who's a school teacher at that point. Only date people who you know can take care of you like that.
Yeah.
But in the experiment, you don't really get the FaceTime with the person until you agree to commit to them. So I don't know. I would love to just figure out, like, okay, why do you have these expectations, and where are they coming from? Did her previous boyfriends do
Why is
that?
easy the way that she was raised? Her dad even said like she likes luxury, she needs to eat, right? Like
Then
clearly
she
her
can
dad,
buy her own.
yeah,
Yeah,
like
exactly. Like, that's my
her
point.
dad
Like,
put
you've
this into her mind, which is fine. I mean, you can be raised however you're raised, but people live. Izzy told Stacey his entire life story. He came from nothing or next to nothing, right? Like he's obviously not going to have a lot, and if he does have a lot, like he's obviously not going to brag about it or wasn't bragging about it. But still, like, set your expectations. Really balance those things out for yourself. Don't just like put expectations on other people based on what you've previously experienced.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when they were sitting down with the family, they asked him, like, okay, are you working? And I think he had said, like, yeah, I just got a new insurance job that I haven't actually started yet, and I just got a passport. So to your point, babe, like, he doesn't have the same life experience at his age that Stacey has already had. I mean, when the dad was talking about how they went to France and there was an entire suitcase full of shoes, I was just kind of like, okay, this is very different live situation that you have had. But, for me, it's like, okay, you have this expectation. There's one thing to have it for yourself and to want to get things for yourself, but it's totally different to expect someone who's new in your life to just meet you at the top of this expectation right away. I think that's pretty bogus.
Yeah. All I know is I'm not paying 20 grand for an HVAC unless my name is on that lease also. Like, I'm not putting in money and then you take the house later. That's bogus. But if they're married, I guess that doesn't make a difference. Which they will be in 4 weeks, or will they? But next, we got to talk about Milton and Lydia. And honestly, I feel like Milton is probably the most normal-ish kind of guy here, and Lydia is the most batshit crazy person on the show, in my opinion. So Milton, we find out, is actually very, very tall, like super tall, and he has a little bit of swag. They have a little bit of banter going back and forth. He likes to tease. He likes to joke. He's not a pushover. I do like that. Kind of weird that he doesn't put the cap back on the toothpaste. That part I kind of agree with. And and then he has these like ugly cow rugs that she does not like, and then a stack of Playboys. Now, first of all, I'm calling bullshit. In the age of 2023, in the year of Beyonce's internet, why are you having physical copies of Playboys? Like, I don't understand that. It's all online, bro. It's on your phone. I call bullshit. If people
Well,
actually have those.
so one thing with that, I was thinking about this. All right, this guy, he's an engineer, right? And he's always
Sure.
on a computer working. Maybe he wants some separation. Maybe he
He,
wants to go sit on the couch away from the computer screen.
I did
And
not think about that.
he needs
That
to
is
go analog.
so
Sometimes
funny.
you just gotta go
I'm just
analog,
saying,
bro.
yeah, I'm just saying. And analog can't be hacked. The stream's not gonna mess up. Everything's just smooth sailing. So maybe he just wants a break.
There's no internet history when it comes to the actual physical thing.
My question is, does he get them delivered to his house or does he go and buy them? Because that's the other thing. Like,
I didn't even know that it still exists. I thought the company went out of business when Hugh Hefner died.
Clearly not, because Milton's got him.
Maybe I thought maybe they were collector's editions or something, like comic books. They're worth a lot of money. It's like the Pamela Anderson edition or something. I don't know. That was really, really weird. But he does have a roommate, and I thought his roommate was pretty cool. They have like a cool little relationship. They're Pokemon masters, and they've gotten banned from Pokemon Showdown for talking their shit, which I thought is
in
hilarious.
multiple countries. Like, what?
How do you get banned off Pokemon Showdown? It's like you're the nerdiest gangster there is, just talking mad shit about Pokemon. Like, it's just so funny. Like, what you get banned for? Talking shit at Pokemon. It's just wild to me. What are your thoughts about Milton and Lydia, Christina?
I'm glad that Milton's not a pushover.
Yeah, he's like, you can't touch my microscope, yo. He would not let up. She
He's like,
tried.
who's the geologist?
No,
and he's like,
no.
just don't. Like, don't touch it.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Okay, my first question was, why didn't we see Lydia's place?
Oh, we never saw Lydia's place?
No.
Oh, shit.
No, we didn't. Yeah.
And I was like, wait, time out. Where's her place? So curious
Because
about
she lives
that.
next door to Uche. That's why.
But like, yeah, I was like, okay, either nothing happened that was worth TV or too much happened and they couldn't like edit it together. Those are my two sentiments. But why didn't we see Lydia's place? I totally understand her critique of the rugs. I wouldn't want those in my house, but
They were kind of ugly.
To each their own. To each their own. But it's also like a girl thing in many ways. Like, you want to decorate your space, you want to, make it cozy and make it homey and feel like you. And it was definitely like a dorm room, right? In Milton's place. Yeah. So I understand that perspective from Lydia. She's just, I have so many opinions, and I like keep wavering back and forth between how I feel about her. Like, in some ways I'm like, oh, hooray, a Hispanic woman, like from Puerto Rico of all places, who's really smart and a geologist and like works really hard. And then I'm like, this bitch is fucking crazy. Like, she is a sociopath times 3. Like, not that I'm a psychologist or psychiatrist or anyone who can diagnose her, but there's some crazy ass shit that she's doing, especially related to Uche, which a lot. But the way she treats Milton, it's like, he's her little puppy dog. And I feel like that's definitely an age thing. She keeps bringing that up. I love that he's just like, well, you're old.
Yeah, he pushes back.
He's not even that old, but like, he's like, you're old. And again, not being a pushover. But it's just, again, I'm like, I get it. I get it in so many ways because I'm Hispanic. I get a lot of like the cultural pieces of it. But then at the same time, I'm like, am I crazy like that?
I
Like,
don't know.
is
Adome,
that
want
my
to chime
is
in?
that my kind of crazy?
I
Don't
cannot confirm or
answer that.
deny any of this. I need my
And then I'm like,
lawyer.
and then no, but then I'm like, no, this bitch is like off the wall, like off the wall, telling somebody that she slept with somebody else, like with 3 months ago, who's already followed. Just messy. Messy is the word I was looking for.
She is
Just
messy.
messy.
Messy. But you know what I do love? I love the way she yells, Milton! Milton!
It's
We
just
gotta
her
go.
little puppy dog. And I'm like, I can't. I can't.
Oh my god, it's so funny. Adone, what are your thoughts about Milton and Lydia?
So I agree with what most of my wife said about this, but also, I like to think of things in terms of, the sacred timeline, if you will. Shout out to Loki. So, you know, if you go back, Lydia was really into Izzy,
Yes,
and
she was.
she was completely broken when he told her, like, "Hey, I'm having a connection with somebody else. Like, we should stop talking, whatever." And to me, she just reeks of desperation. And
Yeah.
this is why I think,
And so
I'm
does her family. I just want to say that.
yes, that is true from what we saw. I think that conspiracy theorist in me thinks that she pulled off the most diabolical reality TV plan of all time because I actually think she did follow Uche onto the show and was successful in actually getting there. I do not think Uche and her got together a plan. I think it's actually crazier that she knew he was going to go on the show and then decided to follow him and then actually got there. Like that's
Hmm.
amazing to me. Like, oh, but with her and Milton, I mean, I do kind of worry about their dynamic going forward because, yes, I mean, he was definitely not her first choice in any shape, any form or fashion. She definitely wanted Izzy first, and she was completely broken about it. And then she jumped to him. I think she had decided, like, I'm leaving the pods with the fiance. I don't care who it is.
Hmm.
I'm leaving here
Hmm.
with the ring because the way she was talking to Milton, she was just like, at first she almost wanted nothing to do with him, and then as time went by, she was like, "Oh, I want you, I need you, I'll be here for you, I'll love you so hard, blah blah blah." And I'm like, you need to work on yourself. Like I know it's easy for us to judge, but like there's a lot of internal stuff that's going on there. So I don't know. I'm concerned for Milton if they actually go through with it, and in a year or two when the excitement of the show is gone and it's just the two of them living in marriage, they're probably gonna end up like the rest of the unsuccessful couples from the show where it's not about
Yeah.
the spotlight anymore. It's about the actual real grind of being married.
No, I don't see her tolerating him playing Pokemon Go for 3 hours.
But I also think in some ways, like Milton is more mature than her
In some ways, yeah.
emotionally, right? She's older, but he's more mature in how he approaches things and thinks about things and approaches the relationship. And she's just like Adom said, like desperation queen, right? It's just all about the ring and the fiance and the show and what comes of it for her versus for him where it feels more genuine and a little bit more emotionally mature.
True, true. All right. And then they have a party. So this party's going on, all these people are coming, and we see for the first time Johnny and Chris, and they have seemed to have gotten together, which is pretty cool. It's like, oh, they have a cute little story. They were at the airport at the same time, and they locked eyes and heard each other's voices, and all of a sudden everything was forgiven, and then they got together. Cute story. I dig it. I dig it. We also see this guy named Carter, who does a little bit of narrating, and then we see Miriam, who we still don't know what she does for work. It's just it's not skincare. It's not a dermatologist. Who knows what she does for work? We don't know. But she is in Houston now, and she is there, so she was at the place too. But what gets really weird is Johnny and Izzy have a conversation, and it was the most unnecessary conversation. Like, it was crazy. He called her sketch. He really made her feel bad, and a little bit was because she was giving misinformation from John to Chris to Izzy, and she was like, "Okay, yeah, for sure, I messed up there, but we talked to Chris, and we're cool now, and we're together." And he was just he would not let up. He was really, really mean to her, and then he went over to Stacy and bragged about how badly he told her off. and told her, I'm so glad I got with you and not her. And the whole thing was just grimy. I did not love that. Christina, I need to know your thoughts. What are your thoughts about that?
Super unnecessary conversation, super uncomfortable conversation to watch. I thought in some ways that Johnny was like super genuine in the pods, and then she did get sketchy. She did get sketchy, like, trying to get who she thought she wanted, and realizing that she may have made the wrong choice, and then like, telling the world that Izzy potentially has bad credit, like out of the blue, and
Yeah.
basically telling the two guys two different stories. Like, she
Yeah.
did get sketchy for sure. And I see where Izzy, like, I see how Izzy wanted to clear the air, kind of like he tried to with Lydia on the beach in Mexico.
Mhm.
But I also see how Johnny is incapable of that, right? Like, Johnny is incapable of, like, having an adult conversation, not getting triggered, and not flying off the wall. And yeah, I think, not to say that it's entirely Johnny's fault, because it's not. She did not start the conversation. She got wrapped into a shitty situation. But like, I see how all of that devolved very quickly. I hate, and I use that word intentionally, how Izzy went back to brag for Stacy, and then
Yeah.
Stacy is just like adding fuel to the fire. Like, Stacy is like, as we've seen in the previews, Stacy is gonna come in hot, and potentially talk to Johnny. So I feel like that is dirty. Like, that's sketchy too, right?
Yeah. She said that she wanted to give her cookies made out of dog food. That's what Stacy said. So that's pretty sketchy too.
Stacy Stacy is a very complex character in my mind. And one of the reasons being is that she is totally the mean girl who like puts on the like kind, polite Southern belle front. And I'm just like, this is all gross. This is all so
Mm.
gross. And the like rich Southern belle front. But yeah, I think that conversation with Johnny was really unfortunate, and I'm kind of mad at the producers and the editors for like putting it in like that, but I see why they did, right? Like, they thought we needed to see this like closure and wrap up for all of them,
Mm.
and really it was just unnecessary.
Yeah.
Totally.
Adone, what are your thoughts?
So first and foremost, we got to talk about Chris for a second, because if you remember in the pods, I thought Chris was actually the most normal guy there. He put
Yeah.
himself out. He put himself out there for Johnny, and she just told him, "Hey, I'm going for Izzy." And then when Izzy was like, "I'm going for Stacy," to Johnny, Johnny came right back to Chris. And if you remember, Chris actually told Johnny like, "Thanks, but no thanks," and
Mhm.
left without her. I thought that was a pretty baller move to not go back, but they clearly
Yeah.
had talked more, and so he's kind of caught in the middle of the fray with all of this. And I think, unfortunately, he's roped into Johnny's drama, but he seemed like the most normal person in the pod so far, with his head on straight. He knew what he wanted. He didn't get it. And he was like, I know what I'm worth. I'm out of here. It's kind of weird to me that he still is with Johnny after all of this. I mean, I can't stand her. I think the way she was trying to manipulate them, Chris and Izzy back and forth in the pods was wrong. And Izzy tried to call her out for it, but his coherence and delivery were just all over the place with it. And that's why it
Mhm.
didn't really work at all. But going back to Izzy and Stacy, to me, they're like that couple in high school that that like thinks they're like really cool and popular when like no one actually likes them at all.
Mm.
It's like if you've watched Euphoria, it's kind of like is it Nate and what's the I can't remember, babe. What's the quarterback and his girlfriend? Not Sydney Sweeney's character, her friend. It's kind of like the two of them where they're like
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
everyone knows them and they're popular, but actually everyone really just dislikes them. Like that's kind of how I view Stacy and Izzy. Like they're
Maddie.
not. Yeah,
Maddie.
Maddie.
Maddie and Nate. Yeah, I view them just like that. Like they kind of put on a front to act like they're better than everybody else, when actually they really just suck and they're vampires.
That's true. That's true. I did think it was really cool how Chris kind of just forgave her for everything that happened, but also he consoled her after the whole Izzy situation, and he's like, "Screw these people. They don't
He's a
matter."
good dude. He's a
He's
good
a good
dude.
dude.
Like yeah.
You know what I wonder though? I wonder if watching it back as it's been edited had or has any impact on Chris, right? Like, if he watching kind of how Johnny played everything out, because he, like, in the moment as they're filming, like, he can't see what she actually did, right? And how she, like,
Right.
played the view. So I'm curious to see what the reunion kind of uncovers for us in that regard, because, she was messy. She was messy too. Not as messy as Lydia, but she was messy too.
Well, speaking of Lydia, she comes back for some more mess because she has a conversation with Uche, and that's another conversation that doesn't go well. And then Uche confronts her about the stalking of his friends on Instagram and shows her the messages. And then Lydia drops a bomb on us and says, "You were cheating on me." The audacity of this guy to put Alia through all that stuff when he was actually also a cheater, that is bonkers to me. What are your thoughts about that? Dome, you want to go first this time?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know who to believe here, but with it, as I think about it, I'm actually tempted to believe Uche's side of the story, because everything I've heard from Lydia has just been, nonsense and drama. And so, you know, maybe Uche did sleep with somebody, but I question, like, were they actually together when it happened, or
Yeah,
is she
it's
just
probably
blowing
something
up
like
his
that.
spot? And then the whole, like, Instagram stalking thing, I actually think, I mean, from a guy's perspective, I think Uche was trying to put that out there, not only to cover himself, but to also try and, like, warn Milton, like, hey, this is what you're dealing with. Because, I mean, yes, Milton is getting a different side of Lydia, but he doesn't actually really know what's going on. I mean, he really didn't want to know that Uche was even dating her to begin with. And I think we didn't see it yet, but Uche kind of pulls Milton aside to have a conversation about that. And I thought that just Lydia was all over the place. I thought she didn't want to really answer any of the questions. She was just like, "Oh, I didn't really stalk you. Like,
Yeah.
I put a smiley face behind the I see you thing," which I thought was crazy. Like, if I lived where I live now and Christina was my girlfriend and we had broken up and she put a picture of my house with I see you, I'd have been like, it's time to go. Like,
She
that's just
she was just
no.
driving by playing Olivia Rodrigo's driver's license song and took a
No,
picture of the
no effing way. No way. No, thank you. And then he was talking about how, like, she had gone through his things. He kind of alluded to the fact that she had, like, checked his email or, like, gone into,
Yeah.
like, his files or something. Maybe that's how she found out he was coming on the show. I don't know. It was just a very messy situation to begin with. I don't really understand what Uche was trying to get out of it, other than, like I said, to maybe cover himself a bit, and then also try and, like, warn Milton, like, hey, I'm not going to leave her until I tell you, like, what I went through, because you're about to marry this person, which I actually
Yeah.
think is a good thing. Most people don't really care that much.
I wonder, though, what the relationship between Milton and Uche really is, because we didn't see a lot of that in the pods, except for the one time
No.
where Uche was trying to talk to Milton about who his girl was, and Milton was like, no. He, like, shut that down. So I'm curious to see what kind of trust they have with each other, what kind of rapport they have with each other, because from the small snippet that we saw and the way that even Milton, tried to get Lydia out of the conversation with Uche, where he was like, well,
Yeah.
we got to be somewhere in 10 minutes. It just seems like
Mhm.
there's some hostility or, like, some beef or just, like, something that we didn't see or something that has gone unspoken between the two of them, which, could just make the situation worse.
Yeah. I'm excited to see what happens when Uche fills in Milton, because Milton is not a super pushover. He's got a little bit of a spine and he'll push back a little bit. So I'm really excited to see that. But yeah, this episode it got a little crazy at the end, and I just love how it ends with her going, Milton, we're going, Milton, get your things. I thought that was funny.
There's a really funny, I think I saw it on Twitter, babe. I showed it to you. There's a part in the show where Lydia is storming through the door to, like, go find Milton, and if you slow it down, there are, like, some old people in the background.
They're, like, running away from her.
Yes, I saw that.
They
I
see
saw
Lydia
that.
coming and they start running away. Yes,
Like an old
I
man
died
running.
when I saw that.
They're, like, turning the corner at full speed, and they're like,
old people, like, super shuffling their way, like, oh, she's coming.
I saw that too. That was so funny. Oh man. All right. Well, that was really fun, guys. Thank you guys for coming on the show. Thank you for going over this. This was a lot of fun. I love your insight. It was a lot of fun to talk about all these crazy characters, and I can't wait until the next group of episodes dropped, and hopefully we can have you guys back. But again, thank you for joining us, and until next time, guys. Salam, nerds.